Today, we bring heartbreaking news concerning one of the most influential and respected pastors of this generation, Dr. Tony Evans. At 75 years old, the beloved shepherd of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship and a voice of faith for countless people worldwide. His wife has at last confirmed the sorrowful truth that has stunned the Christian community. What she disclosed not only exposes the hidden struggles behind the pulpit, it also compels us to face the very real challenges that even spiritual giants encounter. Stay with us, because the details we're about to share will leave you not just heartbroken, but deeply inspired. When you hear the name Tony Evans, for many, it brings to mind his powerful preaching, his unwavering faith, and his role as a spiritual father figure to millions. Through the decades, Pastor Evans has not only shepherded Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, but also built a legacy that extends far beyond his church walls. His books, his radio ministry, and his global reach have touched lives across continents. Yet, behind every great leader, there is always a family. In Tony Evans' case, his wife has been the steady anchor by his side. From seasons of growth to moments of unimaginable sorrow, she has walked this path faithfully with him. Now, at 75, Pastor Evans and his wife are facing a chapter that has shaken both their congregation and the wider Christian world.
Today, we're taking you past the headlines and into the truth. What exactly was confirmed? Why has this revelation stirred such emotion among both believers and skeptics? And how does this new reality reshape the way we view Pastor Evans' legacy? You will hardly believe the details that have now come to light. Details that highlight not only human frailty, but also the immense strength of faith in the midst of adversity. We'll unpack this carefully, separating fact from speculation, giving you a closer look at the family's response, the congregation's reaction, and the flood of support from the Christian community at large. Stay tuned, because this story isn't simply about grief, it's about resilience, hope, and the lessons every one of us can take from the journey of one of the most impactful pastors of our era. And trust me, the deeper we dig, the more surprising it becomes. But before we get into the heartbreaking confirmation from his wife, it's essential to understand exactly who Pastor Tony Evans is and why this moment carries so much weight for millions around the globe. Tony Evans is far more than just a pastor. He's a trailblazer. He was the first African American to publish a full Bible commentary and study Bible, historic achievements that secured his place in church history. His voice is unmistakable through his long-running radio broadcast, The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, which has aired for decades in more than 130 countries. Families across generations have tuned in daily to hear his scripture-based teachings on faith, family, leadership, and perseverance. But beyond the pulpit and the microphone, Evans has been a deeply devoted husband and father. He married his late wife, Lois Evans, back in 1970, and together they raised 4 children: Priscilla, Crystal, Anthony Jr., and Jonathan. Each of them has carried forward the family's legacy of ministry and service, making the Evans household a cornerstone in modern Christian culture. Priscilla Shirer, for example, is a best-selling author, speaker, and actress in Christian films. Jonathan Evans has continued the pastoral and motivational side of his father's mission. Pastor Evans' ministry has never been just about preaching. It has always been about impact. Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, the church he started with only a small group of members, has since grown into a congregation of more than 10,000. Yet beyond the numbers, the church has become a place of refuge for hurting families, struggling believers, and communities in need. From marriage counseling programs to youth mentorship and urban outreach, Evans has consistently stepped forward to address the deep-rooted issues that affect everyday people. But alongside his many public triumphs, his personal life has also carried its share of trials. In 2019, tragedy struck when Lois Evans Hughes, beloved wife of nearly 5 decades, passed away after a long battle with cancer. The entire Christian world joined him in mourning. Many had admired Lois not just as his partner in ministry, but as a spiritual leader in her own right. Her passing shook the Evans family deeply, yet it also became the moment when Pastor Evans displayed remarkable strength. Rooted in unshakable faith, he stood before his congregation and delivered one of the most emotional sermons of his lifetime, openly acknowledging his grief, while still pointing to God's sovereignty. This is why the news we're sharing today feels especially heavy. Looking at Pastor Evans' life, we see a man who has already borne immense loss, who's carried the burden of leadership for so many years, who has inspired countless people to keep holding on to hope. And now, with his wife stepping forward to confirm the most recent sorrowful development in their journey, it's impossible not to feel the weight of this moment. But here's where it becomes even more intense. The details that have emerged aren't just about another personal trial. They have sparked a larger conversation about faith, family, and what it truly means to walk through hardship while the entire world is watching. And in the next section, we'll go directly into what Pastor Evans' wife has shared, the emotional response it triggered, and why so many supporters have been left in tears after hearing the news. When word first spread that Pastor Tony Evans' wife had issued a statement, the Christian community collectively held its breath. For decades, the Evans family has lived out their faith with grace, strength, and resilience in the public eye. So when a confirmation comes directly from within the family, people understand that it carries great weight. Her statement was brief but heavy with emotion. With a mix of sorrow and strength, she admitted that Pastor Evans' health and personal struggles have now become more pressing than ever. She confirmed what many had already feared. At 75 years old, Pastor Tony Evans is facing one of the most difficult chapters of his life, one that has pushed their family to lean even more on prayer and the support of those around them. Though she avoided going into extensive detail, her words alone were enough to stir waves of emotion. She spoke openly about the physical, emotional, and spiritual burdens Evans has been carrying. After decades of tireless ministry, global travel, writing books, preparing sermons, counseling others, and bearing the emotional weight of leading one of Dallas' largest churches, his body has finally begun to show signs of strain. And for the first time, his wife acknowledged that the family must now place his health as their top priority. Above everything else, this is where the news hits the deepest. Followers and fans often view their spiritual leaders as nearly invincible. Pastors like Tony Evans have been voices of strength and guidance to millions. So the idea of him being vulnerable, of him being simply human, feels almost unthinkable. Yet in her statement, his wife reminded everyone of a simple reality. Behind the sermons, behind the pulpit, and behind the legacy stands a man, a husband, a father, and a grandfather who is in need of rest, healing, and grace. What struck many the most wasn't only her words, but her tone. She wasn't just making an announcement, she was pouring out her heart. She spoke of how the family has been rallying together, how the church body has surrounded them with comfort, and how, despite the sorrow, their faith has remained unshaken. She even urged people not only to pray for Tony, but also to remember that pastors too are human beings who struggle, who grieve, and who face battles away from the stage. The response from supporters was instant and overwhelming. Social media flooded with love and prayers. Hashtags with Tony Evans' name began trending as thousands shared stories of how his sermons, books, and words of encouragement had carried them through their darkest hours. For many, this news felt personal, like a beloved family member was weathering a storm. Yet, there was something powerfully unifying in that moment. The sadness didn't only stir tears, it stirred conversations about resilience, mortality, and the real weight of sustaining public ministry for decades. His wife's confirmation was not just a statement, it became an invitation for the community to walk alongside them through this season, just as the Evans family has faithfully walked alongside countless others through theirs. But here's where it becomes even more revealing. As heartbreaking as the news is, her confirmation uncovers deeper truths about the cost of leadership, about the unseen battles public figures carry, and about the way faith truly works when life takes its most painful turns. And in the next section, we'll explore these lessons, what this moment reveals, not only about Pastor Evans' journey, but about our own lives as well. When Pastor Tony Evans' wife confirmed the heartbreaking news of her husband's struggles, many didn't just hear it as a simple update. They felt it in their spirit. Why? Because it reminded them of something we so often forget. Even the strongest leaders, even the most faithful servants of God, bear burdens unseen by the world. For decades, Tony Evans has given everything to others. He has counseled broken marriages, stood with grieving families, encouraged young people searching for direction, and mentored pastors who felt ready to quit. He's been the voice on the radio when listeners couldn't see a reason to go on, the pastor whose sermons restored faith after seasons of doubt, and the author whose words lay on bedside tables, offering wisdom in sleepless nights. And yet, behind all that ministry, There has always been a cost. Ministry doesn't just take your time, it takes your heart, your strength, and at times, even your health. So when his wife revealed that Evans is now facing a season of physical and emotional strain, she wasn't only disclosing a private matter, she was shining a light on the hidden weight of leadership. And the deeper message here is both simple and powerful. No one, no matter how strong, is exempt from life's valleys. It doesn't matter how many sermons you've preached or how many souls you've reached. Life always finds a way to remind us of our humanity. For many who admire him, this became a mirror. If Pastor Evans, with all his wisdom and spiritual strength, can walk through seasons of weakness, then what does that mean for us? It means that our struggles don't make us failures, they make us human. It means that leaning on others, seeking rest, and admitting pain is not weakness, but an important step toward healing. And his wife's words carried a clear biblical echo. Throughout Scripture, we see leaders who shouldered unimaginable burdens. Moses led an entire nation, yet even he needed Aaron and Hur to hold up his hands. Elijah, after incredible victories, collapsed in exhaustion and cried out to God in despair. And even Jesus, on the night before his crucifixion, asked his disciples to pray with him because his soul was overwhelmed with sorrow. In many ways, Pastor Evans' current season is a modern reflection of those timeless truths. It reminds us that strength doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means being honest enough to admit when it isn't. It means drawing nearer to God in the middle of pain and leaning on the people he has placed around us. The deeper meaning is also communal. When news like this emerges, it becomes bigger than a private family matter. It becomes an opportunity for the body of Christ to rise up, to surround their leader with love, to cover his family in prayer, and to remind them they are not alone. For decades, Pastor Evans has poured himself out. Now it's the season for others to pour back into him. And there's another layer we can't overlook: legacy. At 75, Pastor Evans' life already stands as a testimony of faithfulness. Whatever may come next, the legacy he has built through his church, his family, his books, and his radio ministry can never be erased. Yet this chapter adds something unique to that legacy. It reminds us that his story isn't only about victories, it's also about vulnerability. And sometimes the most powerful testimonies don't emerge from moments of triumph, but from seasons of struggle. But here's where it becomes even more personal. What Pastor Evans' wife has shared is not just news, it's a challenge. A challenge to reflect on how we treat our leaders, how we guard our own health, and how we balance faith with the reality of human limits. Because if someone as strong as Tony Evans can walk through a battle like this, maybe it's time we begin looking at our own lives through a different lens. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at the response from his congregation and from the global Christian community. And trust me, the outpouring of love and support will leave you speechless. The moment Pastor Tony Evans' wife confirmed the heartbreaking news, the ripple effect was instant. For the thousands who call Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship their spiritual home, it struck like a personal blow. This is the man who baptized their children, counseled their marriages, officiated their weddings, and stood by their families at funerals. Pastor Evans has always been more than a preacher. He has been a father figure, a mentor, and a study hand guiding his flock through life's storms. When the announcement was made during a Sunday service, the room fell into a heavy silence. Some bowed their heads in prayer, while others reached for tissues. Unable to stop their tears, the elders of the church stepped forward to pray over the Evans family, their voices trembling but filled with faith as they asked God for strength and healing. It wasn't just another church service, it became a moment of unity. A reminder that the shepherd who had carried his flock for decades now needed his flock to carry him. And beyond Dallas, the news spread swiftly to the global Christian community. Social media lit up almost immediately. On Twitter, heartfelt posts began pouring in. People shared clips of their favorite Tony Evans sermons with captions like, "This message carried me through my darkest hour," or "Pastor Evans helped me believe again when I thought hope was gone." On Instagram, the same wave of love continued. Photos of Pastor Evans with his late wife Lois began circulating on Facebook, often shared with heartfelt prayers attached, reminding many of the painful path he has already walked. Entire chains of prayer formed in churches across the nation, dedicated services to lifting up Evans and his family. Yet what touched people most was the remarkable diversity of those offering support. It wasn't only believers from Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship or listeners of his radio broadcast. Leaders of other denominations, pastors worldwide, and even well-known figures outside of the church community spoke out. Gospel singers, authors, and even athletes whose lives had once been touched by Evans' ministry all came forward to share their stories. They reminded everyone that Tony Evans' influence stretches far beyond the pulpit. His words have crossed boundaries of geography, culture, and even generations. Within the Evans household, the family has reportedly been deeply moved by this flood of support. They always knew their ministry reached lives, but moments like these show just how far that reach truly extends. His wife noted how each prayer, each message, each gesture of love has been a source of comfort, proving to them they are not walking this road alone. But here's where it grows even more powerful. This hasn't only been about mourning, it has been about mobilization. Members of the congregation have started volunteering more actively, stepping up to handle responsibilities Evans can no longer take on by himself. Small church groups have organized prayer gatherings, fasting sessions, and even acts of service designed to uphold the Evans family in this difficult season. It's as if the church has taken his years of teaching about community and decided to fully live it out. At the same time, the news has sparked a broader discussion about pastoral care. People are asking, how do we genuinely care for our leaders? How often do we take it for granted that pastors, bishops, and spiritual mentors are always there for us while forgetting that they too need compassion, rest, and support? In many ways, Tony Evans' struggle has become a wake-up call, urging believers to check on their leaders and see them not just as spiritual guides, but as human beings with real needs. The congregation's response has made one thing clear. Pastor Evans' legacy is not only in his books, sermons, or broadcasts. It lives in the relationships he has built. And now, as his wife has confirmed the difficult truth of his condition, the community has answered with the same loyalty and love he once poured into them, choosing to walk with him as he has walked with them. Yet this is only one part of the story, because even as the congregation rallies around Pastor Evans, deeper questions are surfacing. What does this mean for the future of his ministry? How will Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship adjust if he steps back from leadership? And perhaps, most importantly, what lessons can we take from how Pastor Evans and his family are navigating this storm?